Hello, my name is Ilona, and I want to start with a change. You can probably see that the window is suddenly on the other side. You see a door there you usually don't see, and that's because I've changed my desk from one side to the other side. Yesterday, someone made some suggestions, maybe to change something. So I don't have a lot of room. I have a sweet little house where I'm very happy. I live by myself, so there's plenty of space for me. But there's not a lot of option where I can record my video. And I've noticed on this side that I have more room for my lamps. So just let me know if you think this is fine, if you see the difference, or if you're like, well, it's fine with me either way. So in that case, I'm just going to see how it feels for me. So it's also possible that I might end up on the other side again, but I'll just see what happens. The second thing I want to mention, and I'm just very grateful. I'm so grateful. It's something I don't really mention, but I have 20,000 subscribers on YouTube, and I'm so grateful. And I want to thank everyone that subscribed, everyone that takes the time to react or to like or just watch my video. Thank you so much for that. Of course, things can change very easily on YouTube, but I'm now going to enjoy this moment that I've reached this number. And thank you, just thank you for all the wonderful, warm comments, reactions. I feel very blessed by that. So thank you very much. In this video of Shadowwork, I want to talk about false spirituality or fake spirituality. I actually used an article from Wendy Gillissen. It's a Dutch, at least she's Dutch. I think she works with a regression therapy, and she has a lot of very interesting articles. It is in Dutch. I'm going to share it on Telegram. But of course, I will try to translate this as well as I can. A few points that I think are very important. She also uses the term false light. I actually want to use false light for the archons and the demiurge as, so to speak, the head of all the dark energies that we are dealing with. Actually used some of the dark energies to create a fake light. So I call them false light. So I want to make that distinction. So when I talk about false light, I talk about they've created like these false light. So if you open yourself up for certain energies and certain light beings without being truly grounded, without really being protected, it's possible that the dark energies use that and create a form of false light that make you believe that this is the true light. So you have to be very careful with that. But that's what I'll use the term false light. In this video, I'm talking about fake spirituality and false spirituality, and she also uses these terms in her article. And really it's about I've had a few messages lately from people that actually looked for help or maybe joined like a group or a workshop, and they actually had very bad experiences. One woman actually had a very horrible experience with someone she was reaching out to. She trusted, very spiritual person, at least someone that looked and seemed very spiritual. And she, of course, shared things she was worried about and things she was working on. But there was some disagreement along the way. And the spiritual person actually used things that she told in trust as ammo to really shoot her down, so to speak. So, she already had some doubts, and she would really, this spiritual therapist really went in on it. And especially when you're vulnerable, when you opened yourself up to a spiritual therapist or a medium, it can really be very tough to come back from that. So in this world of spirituality, you have wonderful people that can really help you along, especially in this process of the Great Awakening. It is sometimes necessary, especially when you get stuck and you're not seeing things clearly. I have it myself. I have blind spot as well. I'm working through my process. Sometimes I need someone else to, help me along if I don't see things clearly. So there's nothing wrong with that. So there are a lot of wonderful people that can help you along the way. But be careful and really see if someone is resonating with you and really helping you along and not dragging you down. And there's some interesting points that in this article about false spirituality. First of all, and I've mentioned this before, it's also called spiritual bypass. People that use spirituality only to focus on the good. So we're only going to look at the angels and the beautiful things, and we're not going to look at the anger. You just have to forgive everyone and just feel grateful, just step away from all these dark energies, the shadow side, so to speak, and just focus on the light, which in itself is, of course, a disbalance. It's not balanced when you only look at one side. So you have to be very careful if people are only, if you join a group or a workshop and it's only focused on the good and there is no balance. The other thing is possible as well, that you actually join a group or someone that's working with the shadow side, but is only concerned with the shadow side. So in a way, it's suppressing soft female energy. So if you feel like you want to talk about things like that, they are like, no, there's something darker underneath and you're not facing that. And that can happen too. So you have this duality, and especially when there's a duality and you only look at one side, only the light side, the angel side, the so-called beautiful side, or you are only focused on the tough things and there's another layer underneath, if there is no balance, it's very important. So if you feel like there's no balance with a certain spiritual therapist or a certain workshop or maybe education, there are a lot of alternative education now, there is no balance there, then you should probably step away. It's very important. I personally believe that this is what the Great Awakening is about. It's about stepping into a power. It's about balancing the dark side and the light side and let it come together. We need both sides. That's why I always recommend, if you work with your shadow side, it is very important to work with your shadow side, but also focus on what feels good to you. Where are you grateful for? Look at all the things you have. Look at all the things that do work out in your life. Very important. You need that balance. If you're only focused on the dark side, it could get very depressed and could drag you down. And if you're only focused on the light side, you are suppressing a huge part, which is not going to bring you in balance, and you will still run into all kinds of situations because you haven't dealt with your shadow side. So very important always to balance things and see things in a balanced way. So no, don't overemphasize a certain way, but I've noticed in my own process that especially the shadow side was not my favorite side to look at. So it was very important for me to focus on that as well. But I also have to focus on doing things that are, right for me or feel good for me. That's very important as well. There needs to be a balance. And trust, of course, because that's necessary, especially when you're looking at your darker parts, that you trust that you will be fine, because that will guide you through that. Another thing is, I've talked about the duality. Almost, not sure the right word for that, but a certain person is looked at as a guru. It's almost worshipped. Like if you join a certain group of people, it's possible that they follow someone. Now, there's nothing wrong with following someone, but if it's completely about that person and what that person says, and you have to follow that, and if there's no room for your own voice, I would say get out of there, especially gurus and things like that. I'm like, just don't do that. No one is above you. Even channelings from Archangel Michael or, Saint Germain, see what fits right for you, or at least see what resonates with you. If something doesn't resonate, leave it. Don't go question yourself or doubt yourself or just assume that they will know better than you. It's very important we take our power back, and we're not going to take our power back, if we keep giving power away to a certain person, to a certain entity, to a certain channeling. This is about stepping into our own power. So don't give your power away in any way, and don't think there's anyone above you. No one is above you. Very important to understand. We are all in our process. So there's also a hierarchy, if that's very important. Like, yeah, you are a young soul, this is an old soul, so this person is more important than you. It's of course ridiculous. We all have our, how do you say this? We all have our process. And really, of course, an older soul may have more understanding, but some old souls are still completely stuck in a way as well. That you also have old souls that are still in their own process, that they need to work things out. So it's very important to understand that. That's also something she mentioned in her article, that especially with false spirituality, it is not very clear cut. It's possible that if you go to a certain school or a certain group, there are very authentic people teaching there with people that are not that authentic and maybe work through shadow sides and power plays. It's also possible that a spiritual therapist is very authentic at certain areas, but when confronted with certain situations or certain people, suddenly can switch to their shadow side and something else can come up. So it's very difficult, to just say, well, you shouldn't go there or you shouldn't join this. See what resonates with you. You are the one that's going to decide. That's what this great awakening is about. We're sovereign human beings. We are spiritual beings, and it's time that we see ourselves as that. Another thing, any theory or anything that could take away your power or feel you powerless. Very important. So if there is a deadline, for instance, you have to reach this deadline or otherwise it's done for you. We are souls. We are eternal. We cannot ultimately be killed. Of course, we can leave our bodies, but our souls will still be intact. So even though, and I can fully understand, I sometimes had this feeling as well that I was running out of time, but you never are running out of time. It's just a different process. So don't be afraid that you suddenly have to reach a deadline. Just focus on yourself and your process. That is the most important thing you can do. And especially also other people. I understand, there are a lot of people maybe in your family, you want them to wake up and you're afraid that they're going to change in a different timeline. That is a possibility, but it's up to them to change that. Maybe their soul isn't ready for it. Maybe it's their soul contract for something else. It's very difficult to tell, but don't worry in a way about that. Understand that as souls we are always connected, and especially when we become more spiritual, we will be able to connect with other souls if they're in other lifetimes or maybe on the other side. That doesn't matter anymore. We will always be able to contact them again. So no one really leaves in that way. So realize that. So there's no deadline we have to reach, especially if it's very determined. This is the way it's going to be. That's a very fatalistic point of view. Now, well, this is going to happen, and this date or this and this is going to happen. If someone is very strong about that, that's also a way of. It's almost taking away your power. Like, yeah, there's nothing you can do about that. That's just going to happen and you'll just have to deal with it. We are spiritual beings. We are manifesting, creative beings. We are connected to God. We come from God. We come from Source. And then suddenly something outside ourselves would be decided and we won't be able to do anything about that. That's not how I see things. I'm sure there are people that see it that way. That's not how I see it. It feels like power taking away from our own, our own force, our own seeing ourselves as souls, as these strong beings. Certain predictions that maybe some mediums will make, or maybe astrologists. And I see astrology as a wonderful psychological tool. I think it does say a lot of things like energies that going around. But ultimately, I've heard this from someone a couple of weeks ago. She mentioned she had a very difficult horoscope when she was born. So that's why she was always in difficult situations. I'm sure the horoscope will tell you what the influences are, something you can work on. But I also believe that's something you can, raise above. You can, how do you say this, grow further than that horoscope. If you step into your power, you can create and manifest whatever you want. You will not be limited by your difficult horoscope. So it's very important. Anything that takes away your power, that you give power to, if it's a channeling, if it's a horoscope, if it's someone that tells you things, any way possible that gives away your power, you have to be very careful about that. Really be honest towards yourself, but also towards the other persons you're involved with. If you do workshops, spiritual, things like that. Listen to your own intuition. Very important. Listen to your intuition. Ground yourself, that's also very important, and see if things resonate with you. There are wonderful people that can help you along the way. Those people will be open for your perspective. They're not going to push things on you. They're not going to tell you that you should be doing that or otherwise. That is not a true spiritual person. They will understand that they have to still learn things as well. And that they, they're more open. They are authentic in their own way. They will just show you things, insights, and then you can decide what you're going to do with it. They're not going to push you. They just leave it for what it is. They just, they understand their own process as well. And that everyone has their time and their understanding at that moment in time. So there has to be a feeling of being yourself. So if you look for help, always see, does it feel right to me? Do I trust this person? Is this person not taking away my power? Am I still the one making the decisions? That's very important. That's also what I mention in my videos. Just see what resonates. If there are things that I say that do not resonate with you, just leave them. I'm not here saying that I have the truth. I'm just telling you my truth, and just see what fits for you, what feels right to you. And if it doesn't feel right, that's fine. Just leave it for what it is. This is about stepping into our own power and start trusting our own feelings, how we see things, how we view things, and that we work from there. That's the most important part about the Great Awakening. That's why, of course, everything that's happening with the Whiteheads is very interesting, but it's about us being sovereign human beings, making decisions that feel right to us. That's why it's so important to look inside of ourselves, to balance these forces inside of ourselves, the shadow with the light, and that we understand that we're both, and it needs to be balanced, and that we are very powerful souls. I'd like to leave it at this, and I hope to see you in another video. Bye.